Hey, what's up GameLeapers, this is Coach Cheeks. Today's video, top 10 top laners for patch 12.14, and there are some red hot, intriguing picks in here, so make sure you stick around for the whole video, because I think the laning meta, the laning phase, it's really going to change in 12.14 based on the actual changes. So to find out what the changes are and why we've picked these champions, make sure you stick around for the next 10 or so minutes. And also guys, if you want to master any of the champions or top lane itself, which is way more important, then make sure you check out the GameLeap website, description, comment section. Just click on that link and you will be able to sign up to get access to our library of challenger tier content that is made by the best to help you become one of the best. Champion courses, guides, high-low VOD analyses where we break down what the best do that you can also do in your games as soon as possible. So check out the links and get signed up, and let's get into the best top laners. Now I'm going to go in order from this one, so from number 10 to number 1, because I think this is going to accurately reflect what's going to happen in the top lane in 12.14, and feel free to leave any comments on the actual selections we've made. Now the first one coming in at number 10, this is Karma. And it might sound a little whack putting Karma in here, but let's have a think. Why is Karma here? Well, that's because she's a champion who can run Scorch. So if you're running Area as your keystone, which is probably what you should be running, and then running Scorch in the last tree, because Scorch is getting buffed, you'll be dealing more damage with your poke. And even without the Scorch buff, Karma would be very annoying to play against, because most champions you play against are going to be melee champions. So Karma, because you have that range advantage, you can poke them and whittle them down, especially with your Qs and now Scorch as well. So it's going to be very hard to actually play against if you're a melee champion. Also Karma, because she has really good kite with her E, it's actually way more difficult to kill than you might think. And also because second wind is getting nerfed, health pots are getting nerfed, refillables are getting nerfed, all of the types of sustain that lots of top laners have at the moment are going to be nowhere near as useful next patch. So if you're playing against the Karma, a lot harder. If you're playing Karma, a lot easier in 12.14. And kind of the same goes for number 9 on this countdown, this being Qiunn. So because Qiunn is a ranged champion, those auto attacks you deal when you poke down the enemy champion, especially when you engage onto them, once you hit level 2 first, even with your ultimate, they are not going to be able to withstand it and come back from it. That damage is going to stay there a lot more. This means they're going to have to recall more. So any lane dominant ranged champion, especially if they're already a top laner like Qiunn, Karma, I understand you probably want to play her more in the support role, but Qiunn is a pure top laner. This means she's going to be even more deadly in 12.14 because of all the sustained nerfs, so look out for Qiunn next patch. Now one champion who, well, would find it very annoying playing against both Qiunn and Karma, but would really excel in the team fighting area, well he already is, this is Shen. So because Shen with his Stand United, he's still an excellent top laner to have for your team composition. But the unfortunate thing at the moment, guys, is that AD carries, well the hyper carry AD carries, if we think about maybe Sivir, who you could consider a scaling lethal tempo champion, she's getting nerfed. If we think about Zeri, she's been nerfed to oblivion. If we think about Twitch, well he's going to struggle a lot more in the bot lane because of the poke that's going to be in the game. So in terms of these hyper carry AD carries who you want to hold on to, well they're just not as hyper carrying anymore in 12.14, that is. So for Shen, we got to think about, well, who are we actually going to hold on to? So I think it's going to be a little bit worse for Shen in 12.14, especially in the top lane, because you're sustained with second wind. This is going to be hit, and it's going to be harder to actually lane against some of these champions, but still his win rates across the board are so insane, and he has so many setups, so many builds you can go. You can go Redemption, you can go Sunfire Aegis for the actual 1v1, you can go Frostfire Gauntlet with Demonic Embrace if your team needs HP, you can even go Divine Sunderer if you're snowballing. So there are lots of choices here, and Shen will still be a very solid pick next patch. Now one champion who will definitely be better though than Shen, and probably Qiunn and Karma, especially in terms of win rates, this is Garen. So Garen has an innate advantage, guys, in 12.14 because of his innate sustain right through his passive, so the HP you get back. This means that for anyone else who doesn't have sustain, you're just not getting the HP back that a Garen will. So once you trade with a Garen, if you trade the same amount of HP, guess what? It's a better trade for Garen. So legit, you have to out trade him every single time to make it worth. If not, he's just going to out sustain you and do whatever he wants to do, which is kind of what he's doing at the moment, because the win rates, that's what they're telling us, around 52% in most elos too. So this champion is not just designed for lower elos, he's also doing very well in higher elos. So just like the other champions we mentioned, look out for the spinning Beyblade in 12.14. Now one champion who is straight up nerfed, guys, in 12.14 because of the sustain nerfs, this is Camille. So you might be wondering, well, why is Camille on here if second wind is getting nerfed? Well, thankfully she's a champion who goes Grass the Undying, a bit like Shen. So you actually do have a little bit of sustain from your keystone. But the real reason why Camille is on here, even if second wind and maybe some other stuff got nerfed more, is simply because of her Divine Sunderer spike. Because Divine Sunderer, guys, the new version of it, is just so broken once you get it. That spike around what, let's say 12-13 minutes, you one-shot anyone. And in the late game, because you have so much innate damage anyway with your true damage, your max precision protocol, when it procs that Spellblade passive, you are going to obliterate people. But it's just way more of an early game spike now, so Camille doesn't really have any weaknesses. Okay, laning phase might be a little bit harder, but the point is, get to Divine Sunderer and you're good to go. But Camille is number 6 on the countdown, so there are 5 champions who I think can actually beat her legit in 12.14. Now the first of these is Gragas, and I even put him as the best mid laner in our 3 most broken champs for each role video, and the reason being is because he has innate sustain just like Garen through his passive, so each time you use an ability, you get a bit of HP back. Very nice, right? But also, Gragas can run Scorch in his runes, so if you're running Comet, Phase Rush, Sorcery Tree, right? You can take Scorch in that last row, and your damage is going to be amplified. You're going to be very annoying to play against in the top lane because of this poke damage you have. Also, because of the buffs to Gragas recently, so damage cooldowns, this makes him a very strong champion. And I should also touch on here that if you're going to play Gragas in the top lane, I would highly recommend just going full damage. So starting with a tier, I think is best, and then trying to work towards Night Harvester, Lucidity Boots, Archangel Staff, and the new buff Night Harvester. It's doing wonders for Gragas too. So there is so much going for him at the moment, and because 12-14 is going to be good for him, because you have innate sustain, it's almost like you get indirectly buffed because of the changes that are about to hit the Rift. So Gragas starts off the top 5. Now we also mentioned this next champion in our mid laners video, and this is a champion, guys, that has insane pushing power, is a ranged champion, and also has insane gap closing potential as well, this being Akshan. Now I understand that Akshan in the mid lane might be a bit more deadly because champions are squishier, but think about in the top lane, melee champions galore. Most of the time you're going to be playing against champions who can't retaliate when you damage them. Now of course Akshan does have counters, so you're going to have to be careful about running into a Jax, maybe a Poppy, because as soon as their jungler comes, you're going to die 100%. So you might have to pick Akshan as a counter pick, but when you do pick him as a counter pick, he is so insanely strong, right? Because of the poke you have with a Q max, the second wind nerf, it's going to help you so much, especially for your damage, because it will just stick with the enemy champion for as long as possible. So Akshan is the number 4 champion on this countdown. Now coming in at number 3, well, this champion is basically Camille on steroids. Now I know that lots of you probably detest Fiora players, but the fact is this, guys, this champion in 12-14 might be even better. Now I understand that you don't really have any innate sustainers for Fiora because, well, you just don't. So what are you going to have to rely on to sustain? Well, nothing really. But the reason Fiora is here, it's a bit like Camille. The Divine Sunderer item route is just so busted on her. And you might be like, well, wouldn't I go Gore Drinker? Well, maybe you can go Gore Drinker, especially if the enemy team has a lot of close range champions. But if they don't, Divine Sunderer, especially for the split push, no one can stop you. Well, maybe 2 champions who we're about to get into, but Fiora also with Grasp of the Undying as a keystone, that might actually give you the sustain you desperately need in 12-14 to actually match it with the meta top laners. And Fiora, because she is so innately strong, the durability meta as well is still going to be here, right? Champions will be tankier. Great for Fiora because of your true damage, your vitals, so she will still be very, very strong, just not as strong as the next 2 champions. Now the first of these is actually getting buffed in 12-14, this being Teemo. So for Teemo, because your mana regen per level is going up by 5, you're going to have more mana to throw out your spells and be even more aggressive. And think about the changes in 12-14 to sustain, getting more damage off because you have more mana, very scary. Also your ultimate's range, the AP ratio, and the mana cost, these are all increasing at various stages of the game. So your ultimate is going to become, well, actually maybe an ability now, and the fact that it's scaling with your AP, so once you start getting Nashes, once you start getting Death Cap, Void Staffs late game, you might even be one-shotting AD carries with no magic resist at that point in time. So these are huge buffs for Teemo, but let's even say that Teemo didn't actually get these buffs. Why would he still be broken? Well, that's because he's a ranged top laner, and because he is a pure top laner at the moment, Teemo is such a big threat, a bit like how I was talking about Qiunn and maybe Karma. Like, I think you're going to see Teemo banned a heck of a lot more because he counters so many champs in the top lane already, and these buffs and the 12-14 changes, he kind of looks invincible on paper, so I'd be very wary of playing against this mushrooming Yordle in 12-14. But the number 1 champion, guys, who's going to be better than Teemo, who's going to be better than Fiora and the other champions we've mentioned, well, he would actually hate playing against Teemo, so you might want to ban him, but this again is Darius. Now why is Darius here if sustain is getting nerfed? Because Darius doesn't really have any innate sustain in his kit, unless you hit the outer part of your Q, but you're not really using this to get HP back, you're using it to damage the enemy champion, right? If you get the HP back, it's nice. So second win, health bot's getting nerfed, definitely a nerf to Darius. This might mean you have to start Door and Shield a lot more often, especially into range matchups like Teemo, like Qiunn, and these are definitely going to be harder. But Darius is still number 1, guys, really just because he has so much damage, and he's still the best top laner to play to punish your enemy's mistakes, and because he counters so much in the game at the moment. Like if you see a tank top laner like an Ornn, just pick Darius, the Ornn can't play the game. And because these tank champions, well, they are a bit more popular these days, Darius loves it. And even against bruisers like Fiora, like Camille, he does so well because he can stack his Conqueror, his hemorrhage stacking, and the stats in every single elo, he's got one of the highest win rates in the game, not just for top laners. So Darius, once again, guys, for another patch, is the number 1 top laner. Any thoughts, any questions, anything you want to say, leave it in the comment section. I'd love to know what you guys think about this countdown and the order we actually put the champions in. And until tomorrow's daily upload, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. This has been Coach Peace.